Oh, here we go. Welcome to a brand new edition of NFL Power Rankings. Happy holidays, Happy New Year. I will be throwing the Happy New Year out till the end of January. I'm just throwing it out there. Yes, I am that guy, Mike Yam, along with Eric Edholm. And if you think that's reason enough to celebrate because it's the holiday season, Eric, you guys have like double the celebration at your place. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I recovered just in time right before it. I got hit with a nasty stomach bug, which I guess is the kind of thing that happens to you when you're my age. So it was a good birthday. Got to spend it with the family, but now I'm here with my football family.
The stomach, man, I don't even, where do you even go with that? Like, you're not supposed to be sick. And by the way, if you were, I know you're early 30s now, but in your 20s, like, you just muscle through the stomach viruses and you still go out there and party. The party is just starting for us here on Power Rankings as we get to some of the top teams. And no surprise with Kansas City, Buffalo, and Detroit leading the way in those top three spots. Keep in mind, still a lot to be played for the Lions, which we will talk about in just a couple moments. The division on the line. Week 18 matchup, it is huge against the fourth-ranked team, the Minnesota Vikings. The Eagles at 5, they've clinched the NFC East thanks to that win against the Cowboys. Ravens at 6, Lamar, in my mind, still in the MVP mix, and his team might be the sleeping giant in the AFC. The Packers at 7, the Commanders at 8, they have clinched their playoff spot as well. Time for the Team of the Week presented by Truist. All right, the Minnesota Vikings sit at number 4. They move up a spot. I think you can make an argument they are as complete a football team as any in the NFL, which maybe might not be a bold statement considering that they could be a 1 seed in the NFC. But Eric, the reality is they haven't been discussed that way most of the season.
I admit I've been part of the problem. I tell you what, Mike, for a decent stretch of the season, I had them in that second tier. Good, but not great maybe. And I kept having my doubts about them. But as you've seen this team grow, and I think really especially in the last 4 or 5 games, the chemistry between Sam Darnold and Kevin O'Connell as a play caller, Darnold and his receivers getting the ball to guys like Jalen Naylor, Justin Jefferson obviously is a weekly target, but Addison's come up big. And how about Cam Akers too? You lose Aaron Jones for part of that game. He makes a couple of crucial plays down the stretch. It has been so fun to watch this team develop and grow. And just the excitement, I think, that is built around this team, too. I mean, how do you not love them? I think they and the Lions going head-to-head next week. A lot of people watching from the outside with fascination, wishing that their team could have the same kind of aura and energy and vibe that these guys do. And you saw it play out in the locker room after the game. What a scene. This is, I think, what every NFL player dreams to be a part of, this kind of a celebration, not just the guys in the middle of the celebration, but the ones being part of it, too. And all Kevin O'Connell can do is sit back and watch his handiwork. He's done a masterful job this year. Look, I think Dan Quinn might be coach of the year, but Kevin's as good a candidate as there is. And as you pointed out, this team is dangerous. They can beat anybody right now. They are very, very, very good.
If you would have told Sam Darnold, I don't know, 6 months ago, 10 months ago, 3 years ago, you are going to be in this position and you are going to be lifted up by your teammates at the end of the season in a Week 17 game. He is beloved. I don't know if he would have believed it. I mean, this is a journeyman guy that's been bouncing around who was well thought of, but I think there's some parallels here because we talk about this Week 18 matchup against the Lions, and keep in mind the winner of this game will get the 1 seed home field advantage throughout the course of the postseason leading up into the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold, we just characterized him the way that we did. Jared Goff was kind of the same thing. And by the way, the Lions, his teammates, the fan base, they treat Jared Goff like what we just saw from Sam Darnold.
Absolutely. From paupers to princes, I guess, right? You just find the right spot, the right mix with the right play caller, the skill position players. It all works together in Detroit the same way it kind of does in Minnesota. It's a group effort. Yes, there are stars on both sides of the ball on both teams, but, this Lions team, I love what they do offensively. I love their creativity. I love their aggression. There's so much to love about this team. But we also have to face facts here, Mike. They gave up 4 touchdowns playing against a lot of backups. I mean, yes, Purdy was out there and all that, but a lot of San Francisco backups out there. 4 out of the first 5 drives steamrolled down the field on them for touchdowns and missed field goal in between there. So really 5 drives where they gave up a lot of ground before Kirby Joseph made some plays. The offense kept pushing the pedal to the metal, and they have that ability, right? They have that fastball that can absolutely take down anybody. But against the Vikings, a team that's really curbed their turnovers recently, got to make sure they have at least one or be +1 somehow in this game, because they are not really stopping people on defense right now.
I think you could have made the argument that the Lions were the most complete team for the entire season, and we were waiting for attrition on the defensive side to be a problem. They keep winning games, but it does look a little different, and I think case in point to what we saw on Monday Night Football against a San Francisco 49ers team that's really struggled. Keep in mind, this Week 18 matchup between these two teams, Eric, check this out. The loser of this game be the first time in NFL history a 14-win team has not won the division. I don't know what that says about the NFC or this division specifically, if it's a good or a bad thing, but just stating some facts. Meanwhile, we go to number 5, and yes, it is the Philadelphia Eagles. You can check the box for Saquon, 2K, on the ground. He gets to go up against his former squad, the Giants. Do you play this dude?
I say no. Now, we haven't heard officially as of the time we taped this, just a hunch, but I think they sit him. And look, first of all, Saquon's a pretty selfless guy in my experience from what I've observed, people I've talked to, and then also Nick Sirianni, the coach, I think just has a better finger on the pulse of his team this year, and I think he understands the big picture here. I don't know that Saquon will push for it, and I don't think Nick is gonna throw him out there if he doesn't want to go. So you defer to the younger guys. Barkley's done it on a few occasions in second halves this year, and also with the QB uncertainty, Jalen Hurts out last week, Kenny Pickett getting banged up. To me, it's an unnecessary risk. Yeah, you'd love to see him break an all-time mark, and to do it against his old team would certainly have a poetic justice to it. But I really think the smart play here is to keep him on the sideline, rest your horse, have everybody gassed up and ready to go for the postseason. Yeah. We forget how good these guys are sometimes. They kind of fall between the cracks among the big teams, but man, there is a bigger mission here, and I think Sirianni and Barkley know that, but who knows? Maybe they surprise us.
Yeah, there's different philosophies, and I don't know what Sirianni's is going to be, but heading into the Week 17 matchup, Dan Campbell, before Monday Night Football against the Niners, said, hey, man, we're rolling our guys out there. I was doing the post-game show. Jared Goff said, hey, this was squashed earlier in the week. We knew we were going to be playing. This is how we're wired. I don't know how Nick Sirianni's team is wired, and if we will see Saquon against the Giants, who, by the way, we'll talk about them as a Giants fan coming up in just a minute. The Commanders, meanwhile, check in at number 8. They've clinched their spot. Is there a real path for this team in the postseason to make a run?
I think there is. And, how do you define a run, right? I mean, the postseason feels so short in the big picture, but, really they have nothing to lose, and they have all kinds of confidence building up, playing with house money, if you will. Jaden Daniels leads the way. Dan Quinn has been a rock for this team all year, but you also have those motivated veterans. Zach Ertz coming up big in this game against the Falcons. Maybe the Falcons helped them out with a little clock management stuff too, but you can't take away from what the Commanders did. Bobby Wagner, another key guy, Zacchaeus, Tyler Biadasz, Jeremy Chin. I mean, Adam Peters did a wonderful job putting this roster together. And I think the makeup of this roster, this isn't a fluke thing. It's a lot better roster than I think some people realize. So that gives them a chance. And you have a rookie quarterback with a fearlessness that Daniels possesses. I'm willing to roll the dice and say they can go into a road game and feel pretty darn confident about their chances. So you'd like to see the non-Jaden Daniels run game pick up a little. That's just one little nitpick I'd like to see. They were so good at it earlier in the year. But, man, there are a ton of things that they can do in these playoffs to give whoever they face a lot of trouble.
Yeah, they will match up against the Dallas Cowboys, another divisional matchup, and a Dallas team that's been, I think there's a lot of questions we'll find out actually next week about what the future for Mike McCarthy is going to be with the Cowboys. Meanwhile, it is time for Power Moves, and it is presented by Energizer. At number 6, it's the Ravens, who I think legitimately are the sleeping giant. A season ago, the 1 seed, dominant defensively, dominant offensively. They were the hunted. Now, all of a sudden, they are the hunters. And I think mentally that's a good thing for this ball club, is I think they need to figure out how to get over the hump and get to a Super Bowl and then win that game. This might be the year. Am I crazy in thinking that there's a legit argument for this team, maybe just as much as any other team, whether it's the Bills or the Chiefs?
I mean, look, I said, if they're really the 6th best team, this is going to be a whale of a playoffs, right? Yeah. This is not your typical number 6 overall team at this stage. Now, they've paid for some of their past sins. They had trouble on defense at one point this season. They had the kicking issues, special teams in general. Those are the two things that they have seemingly cleaned up a little bit. So you tip your hat to them. John Harbaugh always fixes mistakes within the course of the season. The penalties, though, that's the one thing that kind of leaves me hanging a little bit and guessing. Sure. Is that going to be their Achilles heel? Is that going to be the thing that cost them? A 13 penalty game wouldn't be a crazy thing considering what we've seen this year. They've been averaging 8-9 a game. So that's the only thing that holds me back, but I like the way you framed it. Last year, all the spotlight was on them. Lamar, the number 1 seed, the home games, etc., the first round blowout of the Texans. I think this year they're flying a lot lower, a lot under the radar, even with Jackson having a better year and Derrick Henry joining the team. So they're different, but I think they're just as dangerous as we thought they were last year.
Yeah, I love your take on the penalties because you're right. We don't talk nearly enough about it. It's hard to find some issues because the defensive issues earlier this season don't seem to be much of a factor in the second half of the season, and that's a win for this squad. And keep in mind, an opportunity on Saturday against the Browns to clinch the AFC North with a victory. We will find out if it gets done, and I think they're going this way. The Steelers might be going the other way. We will talk about Pittsburgh coming up in just a minute, but there's some other teams that could make a Super Bowl run. You think we've only talked about the top teams? Think again who legitimately can make a case that they can get to the Super Bowl in that next tier of Eric's power rankings. That's next. Back here on Power Rankings, it's Eric's teams 9 through 16. The Chargers sitting in the 9th spot. They move up one position. They clinched a playoff spot with that dominant win against the Patriots. At 10, it's the Steelers who have some offensive issues. 11, the Bucs lead the NFC South. We'll talk about that in just a moment. The Rams are at 12, escaping with a win against Arizona. They are playoff bound, though. At 13, win and you're in. That's the case for the Broncos. At 14, the Texans. What happened to the squad? Meanwhile, at 15, it's Cincinnati, and yes, there's still a chance for them. At 16, it is the Seahawks. But let's focus our attention at number 9. This is a Chargers team that's got an opportunity here to get some good playoff positioning considering how the season has gone. Could finish as high as the 5th seed in the AFC with a win against Vegas and a Pittsburgh loss on Saturday. So story this squad for me. When you look at them, what are we learning about this team coming off a dominant performance offensively against the Patriots?
It was good to see, right, Mike? Because the last 3-4 games, even with the Broncos win, you'd seen kind of a backslide just a little bit, and you'd seen them have to work a little bit harder to get wins. So, to knock Drake May out of the game earlier, I know he came back, but, be aggressive defensively and then offensively. Lab McConkey drops a pass early. They go right back to him. He scores 2 touchdowns. The return of J.K. Dobbins was absolutely huge, too. Offensive line probably played one of its best games in the second half of the season. So this was a complete performance, short week. You heard Jim Harbaugh kind of build up to this game and say, this is the one, guys. We can clinch it here, get in, sort of seal our fate. And they play like it. So I think he's kind of got his team ready to go, even with a little bit of shaky moments down the stretch. So bad team, yeah, they beat up on one, but still, you go on the road and perform like that, it makes me feel a lot better about your playoff credentials and your chances of pulling a first round upset against a team like the Texans, let's say.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. They're not a good team, right? The Patriots, and they should have won. But I think the one thing that we're learning in the NFL is when you are a better football team, you need to smash the teams that you should. That's not always the case, and yet That's what we saw from this Chargers squad. Time for Future Champions, and it is presented by FanDuel. The odds to win the NFC South, boy, talk about a race. Who actually wants it? Well, it feels like it's the Bucs who are the favorite. The Atlanta Falcons, issues. I can't imagine what the situation would have been if Michael Penix, if they had gone to him earlier than they did. But yes, right now, it is the Bucs that are the favorite. Let's focus in on the number 11 team, and it is Tampa Bay, who move up those 3 spots. They got an opportunity to clinch this division with a win against the Saints. I don't know if I would have said that considering Atlanta had the tiebreaker and the way the season was unfolding. Health issues for Tampa Bay, 5-1 since Mike Evans returned. I feel good to say, I think this team's going to win it.
Yeah, I mean, they really have turned it up a notch, right? And Baker Mayfield, I think, I don't know if people saw, but 5 touchdown performance, one of the best showings of his career. He absolutely went off and got it early. And, we've seen some first halves where he's taken chances, thrown picks, sort of played a little faster and looser to see what he can get away with almost. And he got away with a lot in this game because the Panthers didn't offer much resistance. It was almost a perfect game. You get Mike Evans in the end zone twice. He's almost at 1K again. Another season over 1,000 yards. Bucky Irving, the rookie running back, 4th round pick, has been absolutely spectacular. He and Rashad White are a great duo. again, another sort of offensive based team that I think can really give some teams problems. I mean, they beat the Lions in Detroit earlier this season, so we knew all year long they had that capability. But they've sort of weathered the storm, fought off the Falcons, and now are in the driver's seat for the NFC South. I just love their chances, even with a banged-up secondary. They have an opportunity to win a game in the postseason, maybe more.
It's funny, off air, Eric, I said this to you. Hey, at some point on this show, I'd love to do like an underrated, underappreciated squad. I got to tell you, there's 3 dudes on Tampa Bay who I would put on that list. Mike Evans, and I know just a model of consistency. We don't talk about him nearly enough. Bucky Irving is another guy that we got to say. And Baker Mayfield, all this dude does is figure out ways to help his team win. The moxie is there, and that's part of the reason why I think, I'm with you, I think the Bucs go and take this division. At number 12, it's the Rams. Should I be concerned that they needed a late interception to beat an Arizona team when I've been making the case that the Rams are as dangerous as any team in the NFC?
Yeah, they can be, right? But those slow starts plague them a little bit. And, Cooper Kupp hasn't been involved as much as you'd expect. And Nakua's great and everything. And Kyron Williams is great. And Matthew Stafford is great. We love Sean McVay in that offense. But for some reason, they haven't been able to string together a ton of successful drives. Now, credit the defense for kind of doing its job, and they've found ways, whatever the game script is. We have to beat the Bills 44-42. We can do it that way. We have to win a low-scoring game. They can win that way too. So you love their flexibility, their adaptability, if you will. But there's also a little bit of a fright factor with them in that, they can go through stretches where it looks a little labored on offense. So we'll see what version comes out in the postseason. I didn't know what to do with them in the rankings, but I just felt the Bucs were a little bit better, and that's why they bumped up over them. Still give the Rams a lot of credit, though.
6 points 3 weeks ago, 9 points 2 weeks ago, and then this weekend 9 points. 3 consecutive games now for this Rams defense, holding opponents to under 10 points per game. The Broncos at 13. Win and you're in. Do they get it done against a Kansas City team who might be resting some players?
They almost beat Kansas City starters in Kansas City, so I think they do get it done and spoil the dreams of the Dolphins and Bengals and whatnot. But there's some worries with this team, even with Bo Nix coming up with that late touchdown drive, and Cincy still kind of holding back. I have them obviously on the lower end of the playoff teams right now.
All right, the Bengals right now, first team. It's the first time, I should say, that they get a win against a 500 team or better, which was huge. They were 0-7 before that win against the Broncos. There's still a chance here. Story it for me.
Yeah, I mean, they found a way like zombies to just sort of fight through the morass here and get their way to a position where they can make the playoffs, which I didn't think was possible a few weeks ago. But it says here, I think they're going to come up a little short, mostly because of the Denver-Kansas City situation. But you have to love the fight that Joe Burrow has shown. T. Higgins going off. You'd love to see him back in Cincinnati, unless you're any of the other 31 teams, I suppose. But this team still has firepower, still has guts. They just didn't have the right kind of lay of the land this season with the early losses. Really put himself in a hole.
Eric, real quick, if Joe Burrow won the MVP, would you be upset?
I think it would have taken them, needing them to get in the playoffs, and maybe it still happens. But yeah, I mean, the way he's played this year, hard to argue. He, Allen, Jackson, I mean, there's so many great choices. Saquon, I mean, you really can't go wrong.
The numbers are crazy for Joe Burrow. It is truly remarkable. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Falcons, it looked like they were in the driver's seat to go and win that division. That car has officially turned off the road. What every fan in the ATL needs to know. That's coming up next on Power Rankings. Back here on Power Rankings, Show Me Squad 17 through 24. The Dolphins still alive at 17. The Falcons not done just yet. At 19, it's the Cardinals who almost get a win against the Rams. The Niners sitting at 20, almost pulled it off on Monday Night Football. The Dallas Cowboys, they drop a spot at 21. The Colts, what in the world happened against the G-Men at 22? Then it's the Saints and Bears, 23 and 24. All right, the Dolphins, there's still a chance for them, and for what it's worth, I know Tua didn't play last week. They will match up against the Jets on the road in this upcoming matchup. Tyler Huntley, it looks as if we'll get the nod this week. He's certainly preparing, Mike McDaniel's preparing his guys to have Tyler Huntley, the former Pro Bowler, in the saddle. What do you make of their chances to get into the postseason?
Well, he looked a lot better last week. He had more yards at halftime than I think he did in most of his starts when he filled in earlier. He was kind of thrown into the fire when Tua was out. So, I love the way he's always been a pro's pro since he came into the league as an undrafted QB. I think he's a gamer, and he'll give him a great chance, especially if the Jets mail it in after a terrible performance up in Buffalo. So I think they'll take care of their end. Depends on what happens in Denver. So still a little bit iffy.
Yeah, once again, a win against the Jets coupled with a Chiefs win against the Broncos means it's Tua and company into the playoffs. At 18, it's the Falcons who drop 3 spots. Disappointment. I don't know how else to describe what we've seen in the second half. I kind of wish we saw Michael Penix earlier this season.
Yeah, I wish we saw Bijan Robinson out there for the entire game, too. I mean, he was really kind of tearing some holes in that Washington defense. And, Penix was working his way through it. This looked like a typical kind of early quarterback start. He made some brilliant throws, had that terrific one late in regulation, but why no timeout? My goodness, that was what I was screaming at my TV. I assume a lot of people were, too. Cost them about 20 seconds and really cost them a chance at moving up and giving themselves a better field goal shot. So, disappointment. Too late maybe on the Penix call. We've talked about that for weeks now. Too late on the timeout call. So a little bit of heat on Raheem Morris in a season that was looking very promising, as you said. At 6-3, season sweep over the Bucs. They were in the driver's seat, and it appears, at least right now, that they're going to end up blowing that lead.
Yeah, they will need some help. They need to win against Carolina, and they need Tampa Bay to lose to the Saints in order for the Falcons to win the NFC South. Teams 25-32. The Panthers, speaking of Carolina, they sit in that position at 26. The Jets, potentially the last game for Rodgers in a Jets uniform this week. The Raiders, Brock Bowers, here we go, passing Puka Nacua for the most receptions by a rookie and passed the Hall of Famer Mike Ditka for the most receiving yards by a rookie tight end. Raiders all of a sudden have won 2 straight. At 28, it's the Jags. Brian Thomas, hat tip to you. At 29, it's the Giants. No words can soothe fans in the Big Apple following a win. Yes, you heard me right, a win this past weekend. I'm taking a deep breath on that one. The Browns at 30, the Patriots 31, and the Titans at 32. I take a deep breath, and you know this, Eric. I am a Giants fan. I was hoping we would get the number 1 overall pick. Still could happen here, but right now the team that occupies that spot, fortunately, is not in the market for a quarterback. I'm just saying, the seat warm for Coach Mayo in your number 1?
Yeah, they got the Drake May part right. Did they get the Mayo part right? That's, I think, what Robert Kraft has to sort of triage this offseason and figure out. Like, do I have the right coach in place? We knew that Bill Belichick would always fix issues. We're not as confident now with the smaller sample size here with Mayo so far. And when you hear his players talk about the need for change and being kind of vague about it and not exactly, remember, Mayo called a lot of his team soft earlier in the year. That did not go over very well. I kind of wonder what the back channel conversations are like now. Ian Rappaport and other folks at NFL Media have reported more likely than not Mayo gets another shot, and I'll be fascinated to see what ends up happening if they do get this number 1 pick. But yeah, what changes are going to be happening? Is it just to the other parts of the coaching staff? Yeah. Or is Mayo looking for a new job and somebody like, who knows, maybe Mike Vrabel coming back to Foxborough? We'll see. There's a lot to figure out. They got the quarterback part right, but they have the other 21 positions on the field that they really need to solidify.
Last year in the draft, and not to go down this rabbit hole with you, I felt like they should trade out of that position because there are so many needs to this roster because they have the quarterback solved and because it looks like they're looking at a top 1, 2, 3 pick. Again, I don't know if it makes sense to stick in that position. I think there's a lot of holes to fill. Regardless, it's always great to work with you, Eric. Happy belated birthday once again. Appreciate everyone watching Power Rankings.